An American preschool is very different to a German kindergarten. Actually, I was surprised to see how different it is. But I was even more surprised to see how my 4-year-old son and my 2-year-old daughter are coping with culture shock. America's got Germans and we are 4 of them. My name is Annie and my husband, my 2 kids and we moved from Cologne, Germany to Boston, Massachusetts in July 2021. And of course, before we moved here, I was thinking a lot about how my kids would cope with all the changes, a new country, a new culture, a new language, a new school. And I thought it might be interesting to share how they are doing now since they have started preschool 2 months ago, how they are dealing with the language barrier. And at the very end of my video, I will share one important advice I wish someone would have given me a few weeks ago. I was a bit surprised to find out that there doesn't really exist anything like a settling in phase, an easing in phase. I mean, days with reduced hours for kids that are just starting school, that have never been to a school, or for kids that are transferring from another school, like my kids did. Basically here, kids go to school full day or half day, whatever you sign them up for, starting at day 1. And maybe some of my German friends just thought, wait a second, why is she talking about school? Didn't she just say that her kids are 2 and 4 years old? Yes, I did, but my kids are going to an American preschool, which is a German, or pretty much like a German kindergarten. There also exists something called kindergarten here, but that's a Vorschule. I know, it's very confusing, and if you would like to learn more about the general concept, the system, the costs, and what you can expect for your money, you could watch one of my other videos. I will link to that in the description box below. Anyways, we were talking about the settling in phase, the easing in phase, and I'm not even sure if I'm using the right term. Maybe that doesn't exist, the term, as it doesn't exist here. But what I was trying to say is that in Germany, a lot of schools, they are following the Berlin model. And based on that model, parents stay with a child or with a kid at the first day of school. And then maybe at day 2, you would leave the room for half an hour or an hour, but you would still be very close, like next door, and they would call you in case of need. And that way they increase the hours, day by day, depending on how your child is doing. And the whole process can take up to 6 weeks. And I guess that already answers why this would not be an option for an American family, as here, parents just have to go back to work in order to not lose their jobs. They just don't have the time to do a 6-week of easing in phase, and they just have 2 weeks of vacation per year. So yeah, basically it's just not feasible for them. And I mean, we were very lucky. Our school was very cooperative, and we decided that my kids start with 3 hours for day 1 and day 2 instead of going full day. And then we decided to, see how they are doing. But actually they were just doing great. And they asked me after 2 days if they can stay longer, if they can stay full day. I was very surprised to see that, and taking that into consideration, and also seeing other kids doing just fine. I mean, I see kids crying at drop-offs, but I also saw kids crying in Germany even after 6 weeks of easing in, and even after a month. I think it's depending on the child. And that's why I think maybe something in between would be the right approach, depending also, on your child. But I can also understand that some American families just don't have a choice, and that's the only way they can do it. I will now talk about the biggest difference I have noticed so far, which is that American preschools and American kindergarten they focus a lot more on academics than a German kindergarten does. Well, basically, I believe that a German kindergarten does not emphasize academics at all. Yep, you hear right. They don't teach you how to sing the alphabet. They don't teach you how to write letters or numbers. Pretty much in Germany, it's not expected that your child has any prior knowledge of letters, numbers, and anything like that before he or she is entering elementary school. But here it's not only that they call preschool, pre-K, and kindergarten school. My kids also call their caregivers teachers, so teacher Lisa, for instance. And they already start teaching them the concept of letters at a very young age. So my daughter is just 2 years old, but they have this very cute routine they are doing every day. She has to put her name tag on the wall, and then the teacher is telling her the first letter of her name, which is an M, and then they all sing, every letter makes a sound and M makes ma. As you can see, it's very play-based, but whenever they can, they try to, teach them little things. When they collect leaves, they not just collecting the leaves, but they count the leaves, and they are doing it whenever they can. And my son, he even brought work home like at one of the first days, which I couldn't believe it was him doing it. So I actually gave him a speech about that it's not okay to take someone else's work home. And then he said, but Mom, I did it. And I said, now we have to talk about being honest. And I felt very sorry the next day, because I had to find out that it was actually him writing all of that at the age of 4. I was just so surprised that he learned how to write his name and a lot more in just no time. So yeah, but I just would like to mention it is still very play-based, and it's not that they have to sit down all day and have to learn to write and to read. And but there are certain times of the day, and I just think the days here are a lot more structured than the days were in our German kindergarten. And that is also something my son really had to get used to. I remember that he asked me one day, why do my teacher get to decide what I have to do? I don't like it. And I was like, well, because they are your teachers. But it was just so new to him, because he was coming from a school where they had a total different approach, a so-called open concept, and I will explain what that means in a second. But yeah, I'm just surprised how they, teach them all those things like math and writing letters, and they also have Wednesday science, which is awesome. They're doing little experiments and all those things. So overall, yeah, as I said, it's a more structured way. So you might wonder what my son was used to and what he did all day at kindergarten. So he went to a school with a so-called open concept, which means that they had a morning circle, and after that he pretty much got to decide what he wanted to do. They had different rooms. One was for construction building, one was for arts, one was for, I don't know, role plays. And he was the one who got to decide, and then there was a teacher or caregiver helping him to do what he likes to do most. And I think the idea is that kids, have a natural interest in learning, and if they do what they like, they learn a lot faster, and they don't even realize that they are learning. But I'm not sure if I explain the concept right, as I'm not an expert. So if you feel there's something missing, or I don't know, you would like to add to that, leave me a comment. Thanks for that in advance. All right, so as you can see, the concept was different, but I feel that our school, even though they are focusing on academics, they just have the right balance between child initiative activities and activities the teacher is telling them to do, because I know there are schools that are focusing a lot more on academics than our school does. So that's why I love our school so much. I was talking about my son, so maybe you're wondering how my daughter is doing. My daughter, she's just doing great. I mean, it feels that she doesn't even realize that they do have another approach. So as of day one, she just loved going to school and she's just joining the group, and yeah, she's just part of the group. And the teacher is always telling me that she's very independent and very self-confident. And yeah, I think it has to do with her character, but I sometimes also think it also has to do with the experience she had made in a German kindergarten, where they focus a lot on independence and self-reliance. Before we came here, my kids pretty much didn't speak the language at all. The only thing we did with my 4-year-old son is we signed him up for a few online classes through NovaKid. I will add the link to the program below if you would like to find out more. And he had a few 25 minutes lessons with a native speaker online. It was all very fun, but pretty much that was the only thing we did before we came here. And they both just, knew a few words. And now we are here for a few weeks and we can already see that they are picking up the language step by step, which is very cute. And of course, I'm so curious and I try here and there to ask them a question in English or talk to them in English to see how much they understand. But they actually refuse to talk English to someone who understands German. So I always keep an eye on them if they are talking to someone else. And yeah, I already saw them, of course, talking to other people, and I was surprised how much they understand and how much they are, already able to communicate. The other day, my son wanted to ask someone for a knife and he didn't know the word knife, and what he did was he asked, "Can I have this?" and he used his hands, smiling. And seeing that made me very happy, because I realized that he can communicate also in school, even without knowing all the words. And yeah, I think that's what they are doing. They never really complained about the language. There was just one day when my son came home and he told me that he got into a fight with 2 other boys, and I asked him, "Okay, what did you do?" And he said, "Nothing, because I didn't know what to say. I don't speak their language." So I said, "Okay, but did you talk to the teachers?" And he said, "No, because they also don't speak German." And of course, this was heartbreaking, but it was the only time and the only day he told me something like that, and he told me that he was struggling because of the language. Other than that, the teachers are always telling me that he's integrated, he's playing with everyone, he has friends, and that's also what I can see when we are at the playground. He's just playing with other kids, even though he's not fluent yet, of course. My daughter, she's 2 years old, but she is even picking up the language faster than my son does. It's so amazing. It seems that she's understanding almost everything, and whenever she speaks English, she's speaking without an accent. It's just so cute to hear, and I'm just amazed how fast kids can learn another language. And that brings me to the one and only advice I wish someone would have given me a few weeks ago when I was overthinking everything, and that is that kids are just amazing and they are capable of so much more than we as grown-ups or as parents think they are. I mean, seeing my kids going to school every day without knowing the language, being so brave, and to see that I don't think about things so much, make me think that sometimes it would also help us as grown-up not to overthink things so much. Now I said a lot of time things. Anyway, if you liked what you saw, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. That would mean a lot to me. And thanks again for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.